to do everything else before you get to the Emergencies Act.
Yeah.
And you better have the evidence.
Good morning and welcome to Chinook Podcast. We're here again today. We've got Chris Cousine again as a co-host.
Hello.
So hey to Chris. We've also got Brad and Jamie here.
Hello. Hi there.
Yeah, so today we're interviewing Tabitha Ewert. She's a professional litigator down in the Fraser Valley in BC in the Langley area. And anyway, we're just going to roll right into the interview, and then at the end we're going to give our book recommendations. So,
oh, good.
Let's give her a phone call.
Hello.
Hey Tabitha, this is Nathan Zeichfeld calling through the Chinook Podcast.
How are you doing, Nathan?
Yeah, doing good. How are you?
Good to talk to you.
Yeah, so the people we have in the room right now are Brad Donovan, one of our co-hosts, Jamie Souls, and
hi, Tabitha.
Chris Cousine has also joined us from Calgary.
Hi, Tabitha.
Wow, fantastic. Good to talk to y'all.
Alrighty, so let's just get rolling right into this interview. Tabitha, tell us who you are and what brought you here in life, what you're doing for work, and I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on a number of different legal, political things going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a broad question at all, but I'll see if I can do this succinctly. My name is Tabitha Ewert. I grew up in Langley, British Columbia. My parents, when I was a child, were part of the Charismatic Church, and then they became convinced of Reformed theology, left that church, and started with some others, what's called Christ Covenant Church, a member of the CREC. That's a huge point in my history because I watched my parents sort of change their minds on big theological questions. And that made me think, theology must be important. So I was very lucky to kind of have that happen and have sort of teenage years under specifically the teaching of Gary Vanderveen, our pastor here, and just learning a lot in that time. In terms of career, I went from there into accounting briefly before going to law school. Out of law school, I worked for an organization called ARPA, the Association for Reform Political Action, doing pro-life lobbying, advocacy, things like that, before a few years ago transitioning into more traditional private practice, and I work as a litigator here in BC. So that's a super broad overview of who I am.
Awesome. So, what kind of education did you get for being a professional litigator? Like, did you go to university or something for that?
Yeah, for law school, you first need an undergrad. So I have an undergrad from Trinity Western University in business.
Okay.
And then I went to law school at the University of British Columbia. That's a 3-year program where then you article the first year after. It's kind of like residency for doctors. That's a little bit like that. So I did that at ARPA.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your work as a professional litigator. What does a day in your life look like?
It's easy for you to say.
Day in my life, I mean, so I'm a litigator, which means I'm more likely to end up in court. I was in court yesterday, actually. So day in my life will depend kind of on whether I'm in court or whether I'm in the office talking to clients. I do a variety of areas of law. I do some personal injury, some employment, some foreclosure, and then any of the random things that walk in off the street, those ones usually end up on my desk. I quite enjoy. I enjoy putting together puzzles. I enjoy solving problems, and that's a lot of what I do day to day.
Yeah, so you're not in court all the time. You're often just working on paperwork.
A bit of both. I'm in court fairly regularly.
Okay.
Probably at least once a month, depending on kind of. I was in a 3-week trial in the fall, so I'm more likely to end up in court than most lawyers.
Oh, interesting. So when you are, this is Brad Donovan, by the way. When you're in court arguing with whoever you're arguing with, are you typically arguing your case in front of a judge or a jury or a combination? How does that work?
Yeah, it's generally going to be in front of a judge. Juries are very rare. So a lot of what I end up in court for is my foreclosure matter, which is not so much a trial as like short hearings. And those are going to actually be before what's called an associate judge. Probably too technical to get into here, but it's even more more relaxed than me in front of a full judge, I guess. So I was just like the matter I was at yesterday was a 15-minute hearing. I had to wait around hours to get in front of the judge, but that was kind of what that looks like.
Okay, interesting. So when you're talking about like foreclosure and property law, this question is burning a hole in my brain right now, and because I'm in Alberta, and so I don't understand a lot of things, but I don't understand British Columbia in this one sense. So I keep hearing these stories about the government has forked over whole cities to Indian reserves. Now, how does this affect property law in British Columbia? Because as far as this is crazy. Go for it, please.
You're going to make me have an opinion on the Cowichan decision. What happened? So I'll tell you sort of. A member of my church asked me my opinion on the decision. So it's really easy to have an opinion on law when you aren't a lawyer and you don't know all the details of the issues. And so when someone asks me that question, like I can't have a superficial opinion. I have to actually look at the case and figure out what it says. So I pulled up the case. The case was decided after something like over 500 days of trial. There were like over 80 lawyers involved. The decision itself is almost 4,000 paragraphs. Like it's a massive, massive decision.
That's crazy.
So I have not read it. I decided I did not have time for that. I can only give you the more superficial opinion, which is it's being appealed, so there's a long, journey ahead of it. It is concerning in terms of our land system is based on something called fee simple, and it's kind of a principle that underlines our entire economy and way of doing things, and to suggest that maybe you can override fee simple with some of the treaties with the Indigenous peoples. I don't know how that works. I think that's one of the big things is how does this even work in our country? Can it? I'm at all not sure. The Indigenous perspective is more complicated than I think a lot of people realize, in that there were actually contracts and treaties made between them, and how do you give effect to that? There's obviously some overarching principles that have some, problematic issues in terms of how we go about dealing with it. But there is also more modern treaties that were made, and how do we give life to those treaties is a complicated question.
Yeah, because one of the questions about this whole thing I have is if, let's say, Lake Cowichan, or I think the other place was not Burnaby. Mission, yeah. So then who does a homeowner pay taxes to? Because if he pays taxes to the Indian band, now he needs representation on the band, which I'm fine with. I'm against taxation without representation. And then the other question I have about that is mortgages, because if there's disputed title, a bank won't give a mortgage.
Yes.
So then my mortgage...
That is a big problem.
Yeah, if my mortgage is coming up for renewal, the bank can't even seize my property if I fail to pay.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that really likes that.
It's a massive problem too, because something about I think I remember about 200% of BC is claimed as Indigenous territory. Now that's a little misleading in the sense that there's a lot of overlapping claims, so it's not like every part of BC is claimed, and a lot of those treaties have already been resolved. Mm-hmm. But it still is a pretty significant problem, and I think that's why you're seeing even the government in BC is kind of backtracking on this and being like, no, we have to overturn this decision. it's going to go to the BC Court of Appeal. It will eventually end up at the Supreme Court of Canada. And I mean, it's one of those things where, again, just have a workable system. I don't know how you stand with this current decision. I don't think it is workable, but it's not my area of expertise. And again, I have not read the decision.
Well, I appreciate your honesty. I really do, because I'm thoroughly confused by the whole thing.
Yeah, a lot of people are.
Well, we'll ask you about something that you're more knowledgeable about. You were at the Freedom Convoy. Can you tell us about your experiences there? I know there was a recent decision from the Supreme Court of Canada that was made, so I think you were interested in commenting on that. But yeah, maybe also tell us, was it actually a violent protest? Because I felt like from the CBC that they were trying to overthrow
It was only
the
violent
government.
on the police side.
Yeah, none of our protesters had rocket launchers, right?
You know, the convoy is probably one of if not the most strangest thing I've had involvement in my life. I really can't understand how it happened, how it was what it was. And then every description of it afterwards just blows my mind. So just to set the stage, I lived in Ottawa at the time. I worked downtown Ottawa. My office at that point was about 3 blocks from Parliament. You know, when the convoy, I still vividly remember, there was sort of a miscommunication. Some of the trucks showed up early on the Friday night, and I just walked out to see, okay, what's going on? And it was just such an from the moment it started was like, wow, this is incredible. Because you have to understand, we were coming off of 2 years of treating our neighbors like they might kill us if we get too close to them. Mm-hmm. And you never knew if someone looked at you as a murderer. And so there was such a coldness and distance that we had lived with in 2 years, even in our churches, right? Even among our friends. And suddenly I walked on the street, and people looked at you and were happy you were there physically. I remember getting randomly hugged, and just how I didn't quite enjoy that experience, but for what it stood for is the fact that we looked at each other as humans and were happy we were there. And so much of the convoy was defined by that, of we were present physically, and it was a good thing. And I remember even after the first weekend telling my friends, the COVID narrative got broken in a way that was never going to be repaired, because we proved that we were actually fine being around each other. They were never going to drive us into our homes again. And it was incredible. And that kind of was, to me, that's a really, that's such a foundational principle that got lost in COVID, was this idea that we could all just hole up in our homes and still be human and not need each other. I mean, not need worship being a huge part of it, but just not needing other people. It's such a lie. It's not the way that human existence is designed. I mean, one of the first things God says about man is it is not good for you to be alone. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly everything the policies were driving us to do for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And the convoy was such a breaking out of that. So the convoy, it was a mix of different, people and different factions. It's really hard to define it as one thing, because it wasn't top-down organized as much as people want to portray it that way sometimes. It was full of, there was a bunch of, you had William Dravensburg on recently, mm-hmm. and so there was a good contingent that came from Southern Ontario, that came from some of the Reformed churches. There were also other contingents. It was actually kind of interesting, because you would walk around and you would see, don't tread on me flags next to every Child Matters flag next to, it was just everything there. It was quite a diverse protest. It was incredibly peaceful. And one of the things you have to understand is there was so much pressure on them to be peaceful, because they understood that if even one person stepped out of line, that the whole thing was going to fall apart. Yeah. And so, one of the things they talk about it's a federal court of appeal decision, not a Supreme Court of Canada decision. But one of the things they talk about that was, the desecration of monuments. So somebody did some vandalism to the war monument, and it was actually the convoy who came in, cleaned it up, and set up to make sure that Like, that was the character of what they were doing. It was incredible. It was a big party atmosphere. You know, there was so much food that they had to give some of it to the homeless shelter because they didn't know what to do with it. For me, the most precious memories are always going to be, we had some of the Christians coming on Parliament Hill, right in front of Parliament, and we would sing hymns and we would pray every morning. And we would always sing "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," and those words to me still like inspire a lot of just excitement about, you know, what God was doing in the face of evil. It was an incredible time. It really was.
It wasn't sung as a dirge, was it?
No, I don't think so. I didn't sing it as a dirge.
Yeah. I only bring that up because it annoys me to no end when I hear somebody or somebody sing "A Mighty Fortress is Our God" and they're singing it like someone died. I'm just like, I think you're missing the point.
I would say that it was sung resolutely. It was a serious time. Like people felt the weight of what they were doing. You know, because the Federal Court of Appeal also brings up the Memorandum of Understanding, which was this document that circulated that was a bit of an absurdity legally. Like it wanted the Governor General to dissolve the Senate and do. It was just very, very strange. There was just a deep sense that something was wrong in our country. Something was very, very wrong and it needed to be fixed. And they weren't all sophisticated with how to fix it. But there was this deep sense of we need to change. And you would talk to people in the convoy, and like, I remember talking to a woman whose son had attempted suicide due to some of the isolation and pressures of COVID. You would talk to people who lost their job, lost their livelihoods. I mean, the idea that you can just work from home is such a, you know, upper middle class idea.
Yeah,
for the vast majority of people. Like, this was actually the difference between putting food on their table or not. And it just, that was the level of passion. It was not, you know, there was so much mischaracterization during COVID of those who were against the COVID restrictions, that they were being selfish and they just wanted to do things. For a lot of people, it was just about living. And that's why they were against the COVID restrictions. And that was sort of the segment that came out to the convoy.
Yeah, speaking about living, I remember at the place I work, we all got letters from our company via the government saying that we were essential workers. And the joke on our work crew was that, well, who isn't essential?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, who isn't essential? Because, yeah, sure, I'm out there fracking a well to make gas or oil come out so that we can, you know, have heated homes, but I need to eat food, and that was not prepared by me. That was prepared by a cook or grown by a farmer. Like, who's not essential?
Yeah.
Right. I just don't understand. Yeah. And this was a common thing, right? Why do we get special treatment? You know.
Yeah. No. Exactly. You know, why were liquor stores open the entire time? I mean, like, you know, like our idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, our idea of what essential is so twisted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, do you have any comments on that recent Supreme Court decision related to the Freedom Convoy?
Yeah. Again, I'll be the persnickety lawyer in the room. It's a Federal Court of Appeal decision.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
It's likely. Yeah, it's likely to get appealed to the Supreme Court of Canada. I don't know whether they will hear it or not. The Supreme Court of Canada will get to choose which cases they hear for the most part. Right. But yeah, the Federal Court of Appeal decision, I reading through it this week, and I think like the number one thing that kind of comes through it is they're like, the Emergencies Act is for emergencies.
Right.
And the government argues constantly that, like, well, the standard should be lower here in terms of what constitutes a national threat or what constitutes serious harm. And the Federal Court of Appeal is like, actually, it should be a higher standard. These measures that can be brought in under the Emergencies Act are really harsh, and they really violate, civil liberties and personal freedom. And the Federal Court of Appeal does not come across like it was a fan of the convoy or a fan of what was going on. but it comes across as it still doesn't justify you doing this. And I think that's really, really important for the future and the government's future response to protest. You have to do everything else before you get to the Emergencies Act, and you better have the evidence that there's actually harm going on. Because the government painted, oh, there was threats of violence, and they had no evidence of any of that. Like, that was just something they brought up. And then in terms of, the border blockades, which actually caused more disruption than what was happening in Ottawa, the thing is those border blockades were dispersed before the Emergencies Act was even invoked. And so it was, why do you need this? Why do you need to freeze people's bank accounts in order, when it seemed like we had all the tools necessary to deal with it? And I'm really happy with the federal court, both the lower decision and this decision, of just holding the government to a very high standard before they could ever do something like this again.
So Tabitha, I don't know if you can answer this question, but why is it that the federal government has clearly overstepped their boundaries? Can we say that they broke the law? And if so, if they broke the law, then how come no one is being held accountable? And one of the things that really I don't understand, as I learned recently about our Westminsterian type system, the reason why we are called honorable, the honorable member, or the what's the prime minister, the right honorable, right? The people in cabinet are the right honorable. It's because our system is premised upon honor, and when we, as a society or as a government, breaks the law, it is incumbent upon the honor of the position that the minimal thing we do is step down. We resign our position because we're no longer honorable. Yet there are still, last count I heard, there are 7 ministers that were directly involved in this decision that still have jobs. They are not stepping down. And what I don't understand as the average Joe Blow is, if the government broke the law, how come no one in government is being held accountable for this?
So our system is based on the premise that if you don't like something your elected representative did, your remedy is to vote them out. That is the basic premise. It is very difficult to criminally charge a sitting member of parliament because the idea is they get pretty much immunity to do whatever they want, and if you don't like what they did, you need to vote them out of office. That's just sort of the basic. I mean, and you talk about stepping down, and I still can't get over the SNC Lavalin scandal and how that was not something that Justin Trudeau had to resign over. I'm still stuck way back then because the idea that you tried to interfere with criminally prosecuting a business just because it was a bigger business, that you are giving preference to in essence, a more wealthy company, it's still something to me that I still can't get over. So, well, we could talk about, we can go on from there and we could chronicle the scandals of Justin Trudeau. Thank God he is no longer in office. But the problem is that Canadians don't seem to care. They keep voting him back in, or now voting in Prime Minister Carney. And that is what we have to change, is the reality. I could go on forever. My biggest pet peeve about Canadians and politics is, and this is both on the right and on the left, is most Canadians know more and care more about American politics than they do about Canadian politics. They are more passionate about whatever their opinion is with Trump than they are of Prime Minister Trudeau or Prime Minister Carney. And I think that's a huge problem in our country, and that allows so much to get swept under the rug because no one's watching and no one cares.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, Canadians are a apathetic or lukewarm or lazy people.
Well, why do we get so excited about Trump making annexation jokes if we care more about what he's doing anyway? Like, we're paying him all the attention. We might as well get, the best bang for our buck. I mean, if we're going to be like, if hanging for a thief, might as well steal. Like, I just. The people in this country.
I think a big problem of that is just the lack of media, and media turning into an entertainment industry, right? Like in many ways, President Trump is an entertainment figure, and he holds people's attention. And he does that both with his fans and his detractors. And we have, in Canada, we've got the CDC, whatever that is, and then what? We have no real journalism. We have no. I don't mean to knock the people who are working really hard to create independent journalism in Canada. There are some people who are working on it, but there is nowhere near to the level. And so people's attention is very naturally drawn to watching CNN or Fox News or whatever is on in the U.S. And there's just not enough attention given, especially rigorous attention given to our own politics.
Yeah.
Tabitha, going back to what you just said regarding our system, then, if your assertion is true, then doesn't our system then attract all the wrong people? Like, if criminals know that they can be elected to government and do criminal things, I don't know, like our infrastructure minister under Trudeau lost $125 billion and no one blinked. Doesn't that lend to the first thing I thought of when you said that is, well, I should go get elected.
Yeah, I could lose $100 billion.
Right? and then how would we change? How does the government under this system become a tool of righteousness for God, in that we don't take advantage of that very? I think that's a massive flaw in our system. If that's true, that government can go in and break the law and do whatever, and the biggest punishment they're going to get is they're going to lose their job in 4 years. Do you see, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, isn't the old saying that democracy is the worst system of government, except for all the other ones we've tried?
Correct.
But something you said there, I think is actually very true, which is, why don't I just go do it myself? I mean, yes, why don't you? It's complicated, and there's a lot to be said here about joining political parties and where the Conservative Party of Canada is at. But the actual amount of influence that an engaged community, and I say community, like, this should be a charge to our churches. If you can track in the Canadian, especially on the Conservative side, who are the faithful MPs who have been elected. You have church communities behind them who came and showed up not just on election day, but on the nomination day, and were engaged very early on. And we do have a number of very faithful MPs in Canada who are, strong Christians and who are doing what they can. It starts with getting engaged at that level. I actually am also a big fan of looking more locally. Like, you can have voter turnout for municipal elections, I think, is something like 35%. So if you show up and vote, your vote has very outsized influence in that circle. Mm-hmm. So rather than focusing on what Donald Trump is doing, I'm not saying ignore world politics. I'm saying, do you know as much about your municipal politics as you do about American politics? Because you actually have influence over municipal politics. You don't, other than your prayers to God, and I do hope you are praying about the world, you have actual steps as well that you can take in a much more local context. Mm-hmm. So, get involved. Run for municipal politics. Have an influence on your city. These are all great things to do.
Mm-hmm. I have a question about litigation and politics, because Chris mentioned, what do we have? What kind of recourse do we have? And then, every 4 years we get to vote the bums out. Is there a place for creative uses of litigation in the meantime to try and hold MPs, especially cabinet ministers, to account for losing, $140 billion or whatever? Like, are there creative ways that we can use the law to, to affect righteousness in that way? What do you think?
Yeah, the recent Federal Court of Appeal Emergencies Act decision was started in large part, there were some other parties as well, but in large part by two groups, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association and the Canadian Constitution Foundation. Especially Canadian Constitution Foundation is an organization I'm quite a fan of. and they use litigation to try and push for freedom. It's not an explicitly Christian organization, but they're very good and they're very strategic, which I think is really important. But they are the ones who also, here in BC, were challenging our socialized medicine system to see if we could get some freedom for some private health care. Whole other conversation for another day. But they also fought a number of the COVID restrictions and the vaccine passport and things like that. And that there is absolutely a lot of litigation that is going on across the country. There's quite a number of decisions about the freedom to do pro-life advertisements. That is quite important. That's for the future freedom of speech in this country. There were cases in BC, Manitoba, and Ontario about the shutdown of churches during COVID. These are all great uses of litigation. It's important that we do it strategically and we do it well. And that there is a lot of good organizations out there who are doing that.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Thanks.
All right, I think we should move into the second part of our interview, which is about medical assistance in dying. So we've been talking about crimes and disasters and stuff like that, and what's going on with MAiD is is criminal.
A crime and a disaster?
It's a crime and a disaster all together wrapped up in one. So Tabitha, maybe tell us a little bit about what is MAiD, what's going on in Canada with this practice of MAiD. Just get us rolling on this conversation.
Yeah, I'll start just with terminology. I use the term assisted suicide instead of MAiD or medical assistance in dying. And I do that because I think assisted suicide is the more accurate terminology. And I think moving it into an acronym sanitizes it, removes you from it, changes from what we're talking about. What we're talking about is someone who wants to die for whatever reason and has medical professionals assist them in doing that. This was a crime to someone to commit suicide up until 2016. When the total prohibition was declared unconstitutional by our Supreme Court of Canada, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but they never said that assisted suicide has to be legal. They just said the way that it was completely illegal was unconstitutional. And so Parliament had the ability to kind of bring in laws around that. And then obviously we saw what they did. They brought in sort of this exception to the prohibition of assisting someone committing suicide and saying that if it's a grievous and irremediable condition and these sort of different contexts. And then there was definitely the sense where they were planning to blow the door wide open and add anyone with a underlying mental health condition could also do that, which is just so highly problematic. But that has been slowed. We have seen the momentum slowing in terms of expanding it on the political side. Unfortunately, what we have not seen slowed is just the expansion of utilizing assisted suicide. And we see the numbers for those accessing assisted suicide has gone up every year, which is, I just think is very tragic and something that we should mourn as a country. That, how many lives are being cut short, whether it's days, weeks, months, years early. It's something we really ought to mourn as a country.
Yes.
Yeah, I read somewhere that it's the 5th leading cause of death in Canada. Abortion being number 1. Yeah.
That's my understanding as well.
16,500 died in 2024.
16,000?
That's insane.
Wow.
So one thing that I've listened to, I think Jordan Peterson had a podcast on like talking about the medical side of things, and maybe you've got some comments on what actually happens in this process. But it sounds to me like it's actually quite a cruel and brutal process. Like, basically the person doesn't die right away. They're just unable to speak, unable to talk, but they do suffer. So it's not just dying, but there is actually a level of suffering involved in the process of dying.
Which, I mean, I want to say no death. Like, did we really think we could make death fine? Like, that is such the epitome of like the arrogance of humans to think we can take what is our enemy, in scripture, our the unnatural process. We were designed for life, and we thought we could take it, and if we controlled it, if we just did it on our own terms, we would be fine with it. And that's never true. I mean, it's not true in the abortion context either. I mean, people talk about abortion as like, oh, it's a woman's choice, as if like, oh, it's just an easy thing. I mean, if you're taking the abortion pill and you're having an abortion at home, you're going through basically labor. And there's times where women actually see the body of their baby after the abortion pill at home. I mean, the abortion itself is, depending on how long along. I mean, it is a proceed. It's never not messy. It's never not death. I mean, that's what it's going to be.
That's the problem, right? Is that I think the concept of whether it's MAiD or whether it's abortion is that these are concepts that have been washed and are never exposed to most Canadians are not exposed to the reality of the ugly side of these things, and because we're not privy to what happens in those situations, that we somehow not glorify them, but we lift them up and go, these are good things, and we can be fooled into the idea that it's a compassionate thing. These are all good things.
We can whitewash it.
Whereas if I know that there are those in the Christian churches which are against the posters of what an abortion looks like, but I think as gross as they are, we are at a point in our Canadian society where I'm not sure what else is going to wake people up other than seeing for themselves the disgusting grossness of what it is that we're lifting up and whitewashing.
Well, one of the things that for my own self, like we've had, my wife and I have had several miscarriages. And when you go through that and you hold your dead child in the palm of your hand, like there's a certain visceral experience.
You value the life.
There's a certain visceral experience you have, and this was, a child that died because in the providence of God, He decided this child would not live. This was a child we wanted.
Right.
And I look at that, and I remember looking at that and thinking to myself, there are people who would do this intentionally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, to hell with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just, the rage and the bile
is real.
It's real. Like, so for me, when I hear people talking flippantly about abortion or MAiD, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yep.
Wait a minute. You don't know what you're talking about. You've never touched this.
Yeah.
There's a very visceral kind of, reaction I have. And I don't wish that experience on anyone, but it might help.
Well, I will just say, though, that perspective of being surprised, I think is a bit of a male perspective. Yeah. You can't actually convince me that women don't know what's happening. Like, I just don't think women are that stupid. And I've read a lot of post-abortive women's stories, and they are very explicit. Like, I remember one that just really stuck with me. She described how she didn't realize that she could feel such fierce love for an embryo, is how she termed it. Yeah. And she still went ahead with the abortion because the man gets in her life that, like, she had other reasons. But women know what's happening, and they still do it. And in the MAiD context, or the assisted suicide context, where it's a bit of a different context, and it's also a bit of a different context too, because the alternative to abortion is generally a healthy baby, which is a lot happier. Whereas the alternative to assisted suicide is likely still death. It's just it's understanding that we can't control something, that that what God's plan is, even when that plan involves suffering and sometimes very intense suffering. And I think something for us to remember when we're talking about assisted suicide is, like, death is so messy and so dark and so, grievous. And that is what we're saying, but you ought to go through it on not your own terms and on God's terms. Like that's a hard thing to do. It is a better thing to do, but it is a hard thing to do.
Tabitha, I think you're correct in speaking rightly about this, that it's assisted suicide. MAiD is a helpful acronym, but it misses the point on a number of different levels.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. MAiD sounds like the gal who comes in and cleans your house. Right?
Yeah.
But assisted suicide is another level.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, and the other thing too, you just mentioned suffering, and there's a certain dignity in suffering. We're Christians. One of the things that we're taught is that we are made perfect through suffering. Jesus Christ himself made perfect through suffering. That's how the Apostle Paul puts it.
We're taught how to suffer well.
Yeah, right. So it's actually one of the things about becoming an older saint and becoming an aged saint who is dying is that you are in a way participating in the sufferings of Christ. And, and this is actually something that is making you more human, more who you ought to be. You are looking forward to the resurrection from the dead, but you must first go through death. And you must go through it well. We have to finish the race that we start. And a lot of people, I feel, in the broader evangelical Canadian church just don't want to deal with this. They don't want to suffer.
Yeah.
Correct.
This is, again, going back to the COVID thing. Why did so many churches shut down? Why did so many people treat each other in anti-human ways? Because they were not prepared to suffer. And so with even with death, I mean, it starts with back pain, and then it goes to knee pain, and then a few decades later you're forgetting things, and then you lose bowel control, and it just goes downhill from there. But I've watched loved ones who were elderly saints, die, and but they did so suffering well. And I look at that and I'm like, that's a glorious tribute to God. This was them going through the valley of the shadow of death, fearing no evil because the Lord was with them.
Right.
And now they are guaranteed the resurrection. Like, why would I deny that to someone?
Yeah. Yeah, one of my, I go back often to the story of Lazarus, and, obviously Jesus says that he doesn't go because my God may be glorified, that, there's something in this story that is going to glorify God. And then he goes, Lazarus is dead, for 3 days, and Lazarus' sister comes up and says, if you had been here, my brother would not have died, which is true, right, in the sense that Jesus could have stopped the death, and he didn't. And Jesus' response in that isn't, well, you shouldn't be sad. I'm about to raise him from the dead, or, but I'm going to do something. His response in that moment is to weep. And that's Jesus. Jesus who knows what he's about to do. Jesus who has this ultimate hope in himself weeps at death. Right. And we are also called to weep at death. Not weep as those without hope, but we are called to mourn the tragedy. And there's so much tragedy in the world around us, from our own sin, whether that be something like abortion or assisted suicide, but also, sufferings of Job that we can't explain why, and we can't explain what God is doing. We are called to lament and to weep and to trust God. Those things are not in contradiction, but those things are together. Jesus did both.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think these are all really good thoughts, because the theology of it is, Christ brings real hope to people suffering and in these situations. Now, what are your thoughts on legal tools that Canadians can use to fight back against MAiD? Are there legal tools that we have that we should be using? What should the average Canadian on the street be doing? Can we do anything?
Yeah, definitely check out ARCA's resources. The Care Not Kill campaign, I think, is an excellent one. Okay. And that is, there are lots of tools there, they'll do pamphlets and things that you can have and just have the conversation. with your friends and family, I think is always an excellent start. So starting there, definitely be in contact with your MP. There is a private members bill put forward by Samara Danson that is a good bill on this. So be supportive of that and against some of the expansion of assisted suicide. And then, I generally think that the most powerful thing you can do is just talk to your neighbors and your friends and your family about this topic. And kind of open their eyes to the barbarity of it and then the hope, even in the midst of suffering that we have. I mean, these sound basic, but I think this is the most powerful thing that we can be doing. Mm-hmm. And prayer. Never forget prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We have access to the High King of Heaven.
Exactly. It's one of my favorite quotes of, it's one of my quotes of, you can do more than pray, but you can do nothing until you've prayed.
Yeah, right.
It's always important.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Tabitha, it's been a delight to have this conversation with you. We are very pleased to know you and the things that you've been pursuing all these years. That's excellent. We'll be keeping tabs on you, I'm sure, over the next several years, just watching what's going on. Thanks very much for coming and talking to us on this.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation. I really appreciated it.
All right. Well, blessings to you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Excellent.
We are the Chinook Podcast, and we are here with the
Book recommendations.
Oh, wait. Don't stop yet.
Yeah.
We have book recommendations.
Pause the pausing of the recording.
Oh, here we are. We messed up the liturgy.
We did. We messed up the liturgy. Terrible.
Can I start?
Please. Yes, please do.
Yeah, so I'm just going to recommend a biblical commentary for today. That's what I'm going to do. I've started preaching through the book of Acts. I think I'm only at Acts 1 verse 13. So I've done 2 sermons on the first 12 verses. I probably should have done more, but anyway. So this Acts commentary is from the Christian Standard Commentary. It's a commentary by Patrick Schreiner. It's an incredible commentary. It came to me recommended by both Dr. Peter Lightheart as well as Dr. Steve Jeffrey. So both of them highly recommended it to me, and I've just started using it, and it's really good. It's following the rule of Scripture, drawing lines across Scripture, showing the metaphors and the typology and the importance of the geographical locations. So yeah, I would say that of all the commentaries I'm reading on Acts so far, this one is the top.
Okay, what's it called?
It's called Acts by Patrick Schreiner.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like it. It's very straightforward type.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a nice thick tome, and if you're a pastor, if you're a preacher, if you're a Christian, and you want to know more about Acts, grab the book.
It's good to have.
Yes.
I'm going to recommend Defenders of the West by Raymond Ibrahim. That was a book I read at the end of last year.
I've been listening to that one.
It is, I'll tell you, you just want to pick up your sword. It is so good, and it's a great review of not only the history of the church with relation to the battles that we have had to fight against, and I don't want to say encroaching, it's worse than that, Islam, who is militant and spreads through the sword. That these were the defenders of Christianity, and it doesn't sugarcoat anything. And so it's the good, the bad, the ugly.
It's not a hagiography.
Right. And so, I mean, it ends, the book ends with, what's his name? Vlad the Impaler.
An interesting cat, that one.
And he doesn't hide who Vlad was or what he did, but there is certainly a backdrop for it.
Oh yes.
Right. And whether you like it or not, Vlad was a defender of Christianity against a raging Islamic army that was coming to take over his country.
In the book, did he deal with Matthias Corvinus and Skanderbeg as well?
Skanderbeg, yes.
Okay, because all those guys, all three of those guys, together, that's a story that is not known in the Western Church and needs to be.
It needs to be.
Yes.
It's an outstanding book. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And basically the case that he's making is that it was Christianity that stood up to the advance of radical Islam.
Absolutely.
And secularism is going to be a flop in front of it.
Secularism cannot stop Islam.
Yeah. You can't even stop the crazies in their own right.
And in fact, you know what that book helped? That one and his first one, The Sword and Scimitar, it was the first one that I read of his. He's kind of got a trilogy. He just finished the third book. But one of the things that really helped me understand was a few years ago there was I forget the name of the woman who was being interviewed, but it had to do with Islam and radical Islam. And a young lady, obviously Muslim, stands up and says, well, what about the 80% that are peaceful and all this other stuff? And the lady, she was actually a former Muslim from Egypt, I believe. Yeah. But she stood up and said, the 80% are irrelevant.
Yes.
And I never understood what she meant until I read Ibrahim's stuff, and now I get it. The 80% are irrelevant. Well, it's the 20% that are reaching back into the history of, and that's the thing that Ibrahim does so well, is he's showing the history, whether it's accurate or not accurate. He says these are the sources that modern Muslims are looking at as examples. You want to know why radical Muslims are cutting the heads off of the infidels?
Well, that's why.
That's why. And they continue to do it, and they will continue to do it. That's why the 80% are irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's the 20%.
Well, yeah, you look at the holy book of Muslims, and the Quran and the Holy Bible are irreconcilable. They're at odds with each other. They have very different views of God, very different views of man, very different views of martyrdom. Yep. It's a completely opposite worldview.
Absolutely.
There's a reason why their symbol is the moon and ours is the sun.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah. The one guy in the same line, one guy I've been reading quite a bit is a guy named Dan Bermawi on Substack.
Yeah, I've been following him as well.
He's a Lebanese convert to Christianity who lives in the States now, and he's actually a member in I think a Reformed church. He's made the same points in a very eloquent and forceful manner, because he went from being a jihadi to being a Reformed Christian.
Right.
So the man is speaking from
knows his
experience.
stuff. Knows his stuff.
Oh, inside out. So Jamie, what do you have?
I have a book that I think I've probably recommended this one before somewhere along the way.
Recommend it again.
Yeah, I'll recommend it again. This is Deep Exegesis, The Mystery of Reading Scripture by Peter J. Leithart. I remember reading this book and being absolutely astonished at how he was able to take a run at John 9 from one perspective, and then from another perspective, and then from another perspective, and then from another. He did 9 or 10 different approaches to John chapter 9, each of which were faithful to the text, but looking at it from a different way.
Yeah.
That's very instructive.
Oh, yeah.
When we're thinking about how the scriptures work.
Yes.
They're deeper than you realize.
He took Vern Poythress's multi-perspectivalism and ran with it.
Right. Okay, so Deep Exegesis by Peter Leithart.
Perfect.
All right. Well, this has been the Chinook Podcast. We've been pleased to have this conversation and share it with you. We ask the Lord's blessing that He would watch over you. If you are in the Grand Prairie area and you need to find a church, come and see us at Christ Covenant Church. We'd be happy to see you. Have a good day.